What's going on? What's going on, everybody? It's your host, Lonzo Starr, with my good partner here, Mr. Onaji Rouse. Y'all know him from the Concrete Comics universe. And we are here with another Concrete Approved. We got some special guests with us today that are going to be talking about a brand new project. Before we get into that, how you doing, Mr. Rouse?
I'm doing swell. Thank you for asking on this wonderful Tuesday.
Hater. Nah, I dig it though, man. So, are you ready to get into this interview? You ready to bring in these special guests, man, that we got?
I am. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, we're gonna bring in first our main man. He's an artist. He's a creator. He's a writer. He does a little bit everything. He's written a lot of the books of our childhood, man. He's done work on a lot of the books of our childhood. I'm very excited to talk to him. I got to meet him today, and very humbling feeling. Let's introduce my man, Chen. How you doing in here, man? Oh, I think your mic might be on mute.
No audio. Will be right back. Okay.
So. Okay. We'll bring Sean right back in. We'll bring him back in. Let's bring in the main man, Daniel Wu. How you doing?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you perfectly, man. How's it going?
Good. Hopefully Sean can fix it. It's in the settings under audio.
Yeah. No, he'll be able to jump back on and we'll make sure not to make you uncomfortable in the meantime. Sure. No, man. So for everybody that may not know, the small amount of people that may not know who you are, feel free to please let them know who you are and what you do.
My name is Daniel Wu. I'm primarily an actor, producer, director. I started my career in Hong Kong in 1997, so more than 25 years ago. Did over 60 films there, then bounced back over here to the States. I was originally from California, came back here in 2014, started working on Into the Badlands, that show, and then I just stayed here stateside. I still go back to Asia every once in a while, but I've done things like Westworld, the movie Reminiscence, Warcraft, and then my newest show is American Born Chinese on Disney Plus. So everything I've done so far has dealt with science fiction, and it's actually a good segue into this comic because this comic is fully science fiction, action packed.
Oh, it definitely is full blown. We're gonna bring in our other counterpart to this, my man Chen. How you doing?
Pretty good. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Sounds good, man. Feel free for the people in our community, in the comic book community, you would be considered royalty. But there may be some people out here that may not know you, so feel free to let them know who you are and what you do.
Okay, I'm a comic book artist of probably 3 decades now. I started out at Valiant Comics on titles like Riot in the Future Force and Exo Man of War. Exo Man of War kind of led me into Marvel when Iron Man came back from Image Comics. I took it over for 3 years. Then after that, I had a run on Wolverine, some Avengers, some X-Men, a little bit of everything at Marvel. And then I took about maybe a decade off to do advertising art. And then during the lockdown, I kind of really fell in love with comics again. So that brings me to the point where I am now. But coming back to comics in a certain way where I'm actually writing and actually I'm doing all the art on my own comic.
Simply amazing, man. Do you have any questions for them, Mr. Rouse?
Yeah, Sean, when do you sleep? Because if you're writing and doing the art, like pretty much you seeing the book from front to beginning.
Well, I still do sleep because, I mean, it's not like the schedule, the book gets put out when it's done. And I have to admit that, it's been 2 years and we have like maybe 4 issues done. Yeah. So there's been plenty of time. This process is, I don't draw very, very fast. And that's one of the reasons why I had to leave comics, because I have a very detailed style and I have to kind of really wrestle to get the artwork to look the way I want it to look. All the time I'm doing that, I can also do the writing. So there, I can kind of do 2 things at once, because a lot of the drawing is kind of busy work, just drawing like blades of grass or leaves on a tree.
Yeah.
So I also can do a lot of learning about writing while I'm drawing, because I listen to YouTube and master classes about writing. So it sounds like a ton of work, but there's also been a ton of time unfortunately a ton of time put towards it. So
Okay. And Daniel, for you,
Yeah.
real quick, what was your big break in entertainment? Like, what was your first actual role?
My first actual role was in a movie called Bishonen, and I arrived in Hong Kong in 1997. I just graduated from university, and I'd studied architecture, but I knew I wasn't going to go into it as a profession because school was like 100% creative, and then the office work, I did like 5 internships. It was like 2% creative. So I was on a trip to find myself and discover what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And 1997 was the year Hong Kong went back to being part of China. It was a colony of England before British colony, right? And so I want to witness that historical moment. And while I was there, my sister had been there like 10 years before me. She was a model. She introduced me to a bunch of people. And then I got this, I was actually in a bar one day and someone came up to me and asked me to do a TV commercial. So I did that. And then that came out. And a month later, a director had seen it and he called me into his office and we had like a long talk. And it wasn't even an audition. It was like an hour and a half talk. And I walked out of there. And then the end of the day, he called me. He goes, "Okay, I want you to play the lead role in my film." I said, "What?" I said, "I've never acted before, and Chinese is not my mother language, right? English was my mother language." So I was like, I could speak Chinese, but I wasn't super fluent in it. I was like, "I don't know if you want to do that," because I took film classes in school, and I knew that making a movie was not that easy, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, "I don't want to screw up your dream." At the end of the day, he kept calling me for about a month. And at the end of it, I was like, "Okay, if you don't blame me for screwing it up, I could give it a shot, but I can't guarantee you I'll be any good." And so I just went into it like knowing nothing, but just working my ass off and just tried to get into it. And I told him, I was like, "I don't know anything about characters, like in characters and building characters for a movie, but I know about buildings." I said, I can look at a building like a person. The building's got a foundation, which is his backstory. Then he's got the internal structure is like what he's made of on the inside. And then in the skin of the building, like whether it's glass or wood or whatever, that's what he's trying to present to the outside world. So I'm looking at this person in layers like that. Does that make any sense? And he's like, "I've never heard anybody do that before, but it sounds like you got a process, so stick with it and go with it." And so to this day, 25 years later, I still kind of use a similar process when I'm analyzing characters and trying to build characters to play. So that's how it kind of all got started for me.
That is definitely an interesting way to look at it. Now, thank you for that perspective, because now I'm gonna look at stuff like, okay,
yeah. Because to me, it's like, what I learned in college, because my dad was always like, "Why'd you go into acting? That has nothing to do with what you study in college. You wasted all your time." But to me, it's about a creative process and how do you get an idea to fruition, right? And so that kind of leads to working on EVERMIND, which is like, if you have that process down, then the kind of streamline to creating creativity becomes much easier, right? And especially when you're in a situation where it's a group process. Like Sean is the main creator here, but we're trying to contribute to this process here. And so how do we do that without disrupting Sean's process and not making it difficult for him, and be helpful tools to him in creating this story? And so when I plugged into this project, it was already going. And so what I could contribute was what I knew, which is like character building and narrative, and how that makes sense in the TV and movie world. It's the same application of that applies to comic books, and because all storytelling really is the same. It's just the medium and how you do it is differently.
It's very interesting. It makes me think what's going on in Sean's head, right? Because he's wearing a lot of hats. And I work with a lot of artists, and I see the frustration they get when we're trying to work on the art and just reading a script. But you're writing, most of the script as well, and you're drawing it. Are you hard on yourself, with getting the vision that you see in your head on paper, or has it been kind of like an easy process for you?
Well, it definitely wasn't easy. Most days are like, I would know what I'm going to draw that day, and I spend a lot of time drawing it. But then there's also a race to educate myself on writing, or I think I need to know more about writing, and maybe I know enough, but I'll keep on seeking more knowledge, and that usually comes from watching movies or like listening to master classes and just basically consuming material about the craft of writing all day long while I'm drawing, and then feeling the pressure to learn as much as I can before I write the next part. And what I would be afraid of is actually writing the next part without knowing exactly whether I'm doing it the right way. So you feel like you can never learn enough about the craft of writing, and you can never learn it soon enough. So it is a relentless type of breakneck pace of just going through. And it's torturous, really, for me. But I take it slow, and then whether it's working or not is still a big question mark. So I would send it around and get some beta readers to read it, and surprisingly, it reviews very well. So I know something is going right then. So
during your writing process, are you a outliner, then a writer, or do you just freestyle write and then edit it as you go forward?
Right. In the book writing parlance there, it's called the plotter or the pantser. And the plotter is the one that actually writes the outline and kind of determines the structure of the whole story. And the pantser is the guy who writes by the seat of their pants. And I'm by nature a plotter, because that's kind of the way I draw. I don't just start drawing an eyelash and then build to the rest of the page. You can really draw yourself in a corner that way. So I know to kind of just ghost everything in, the gesture it in, and construct the whole page, and then build it up in levels. And ideally, that's how I should write. However, it hasn't been working out that way. That's the idea. So I did have a structure in place, but then it's very quick to deviate from that. So as much as I hate the idea of being what they call a pantser, I think that's kind of what I am. But if you move very slowly in your pantsing, it's the same as plotting, basically. you just make sure the step that you move forward, that you're not going to have to redo it. And then that's just basically moving forward very carefully and trying to plan out, what I'm doing right now, what effect it's going to have, and what avenues are going to open or close in the next few issues.
It's funny. I think Onaji is definitely a pantser. Okay, like 1,000%. It's like no.
I'm a plotter. Stop it.
No, that's right. But that does lead me to the question. You guys mentioned the name. For those that don't know, what is EVERMIND and what inspired this concept?
Okay, well, the actual term EVERMIND is kind of like a way to come at the term of immortality. So it means like your mind lasts forever. So that's EVERMIND. And the concept really, it just came with playing with the idea of if a person has a technology, this technology allows you to inhabit a robot being for a short term. And then it has a lot of great uses. Like you can become the mascot at this future Disney World. And then also allows you to be a soldier that fights on a battlefield, but you don't have to be there because your robot body is on the battlefield. You're safe at home base. And so it has a lot of great uses. And then as soon as that system is put into play and being used, the protagonist, his name is Lucas Zhang, he comes up with another big idea that just really blows his mind, which is if you take this step one step further, you can actually inhabit a robot being forever, because and so that your organic body can die. If you ever succumb to like sickness or old age, you can just, your mind can get into a life raft and get into an artificial being and then continue living. And theoretically you can live forever. So that's a whole other ball game there.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, so that's the stakes, and that's what we're dealing with in the story.
No, I definitely like that, and it kind of begs me to ask the question for you, Daniel. When you first heard this concept and this pitch, what was it that like smacked you in the face and said, hey, I need to be a part of this for sure?
I've always been a huge fan of science fiction. Like I said earlier, like everything I've done in the US has been science fiction based. And I like the possibility of like, okay, if this existed, how would it change humanity? Right. And I think these are the themes that we're dealing with in this story as well. Right. If this Neuralink existed, how would people react to it and what would they do with it? Because everybody would do something different, right? Slightly different. It can be used for good, but it also can be used for bad. And then the scramble for that technology. It's interesting that like if you ever looked at every single billionaire out there, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, all these guys, they're all into like health and wellness because they're trying to find ways to live longer. right? Because they got billions of dollars, and they know they can't spend that billions of dollars in this lifetime, so they're trying to extend that out, right? But
Right.
what if you could put your mind into a body that doesn't ever decompose, right? Then you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So that becomes very interesting. And then who gets that technology? Obviously, rich people first, but eventually, does that technology go down to common people, and what can that be used for? And so all these like questions, like everything about science fiction, I love that because it throws something out there and goes, what would you do if that happened? What would society become if that happened? And then it shows you what humans are, right? The ugly side of humanity or the good side of humanity, depending. And I think this story hits all those buttons, of science fiction, and explores those ideas. But then at the same time, at the heart of it, you have this father-daughter story, which I really related to because I have a 10-year-old daughter, right? And this main character, Lucas Jong, and his unrelenting quest for excellence and trying to prove himself, right? Has costs. It has personal costs to his family, right? And these are definitely themes I've struggled with in my life, right? Like you can work forever, you can work every project, be in every single movie, but then you neglect your family and then you don't have a relationship with them. So what does that mean? Yeah, you might be the world's biggest movie star, but what are you as a dad? And so these are all themes that I definitely think about a lot, and they're themes that are really relatable in this character. And I think both those things, the science fiction aspect, but then also the real relatable like father-daughter relationship, is what made me want to be involved in this project. And then the fact that it's a cool ass comic book. Yeah. That also.
Yeah.
Like I've always revolved around comic books, but I've never been involved. And so this is a great chance to really get involved.
That's fair.
Right before we get into the next question, guys, I just want to let you know in the comment section we dropped the Kickstarter link. Feel free to tap into it, so that way you can support Daniel and Sean on this. EVERMIND. But yeah, let's get to the next question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So this is a good one too. I'm quite excited to see what they think about this one. So who or what are y'all inspirations? Was it any old films, anything, any books you guys read? Who or what are your inspirations?
Yeah.
Well, for me, I love science fiction. So I guess my first real, what really blew me away were movies because they're so immersive. And then to show me a world that I think is cool as hell. So I think like movies like Blade Runner, I used to like The Road Warrior and things like Minority Report. It showed me a world where everything is just so ultra cool. And I also like drawing. So there are artists out there that really inspire me. And I like to draw. So it's just a natural thing to kind of combine those two. So if I had to name influences, there are artists like Olivier Coipel, Barry Windsor-Smith, Jim Chung, Pepe Larraz. These are all just comic book artists that, I can't look at enough of their work. I just eat it up, and then I kind of want to draw just like them. And then the subject matter I choose these days to draw the most is science fiction because it gives you cool stuff to draw. I'm an industrial designer, major in college. So just to combine those two and just to do it for a living every day, I think it's, what more can a creator ask for?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, and for Daniel, it'd probably be a little different. Like, what would say your inspiration?
I've got tons of people that influence me. Number one is Bruce Lee, for sure. Like from being a little kid, being an Asian kid, and only seeing that representation on screen as a kid, but also him being full of confidence and charisma. Like that was a lot to follow. Then diving deeper into it and realizing like he was a deep philosopher, and he had really deep philosophies about life and martial arts and all that stuff. Like that was really inspiring to me to be able to encompass all of that and everything he did, which was martial arts training, filmmaking, acting, and life, and just being a person. Like he was able to incorporate all those philosophies into one thing and follow that. That was the number one inspiration. I think what influenced me a lot as a kid growing up visually with science fiction was definitely like 2001 Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick. Like I didn't understand what the hell that movie was talking about, but it looked good. It looked real good, right? And like that was very different than like Star Wars or Star Trek, which was like more mainstream and like easily understandable. But something about not understanding 2001 Space Odyssey attracted me to it. These very beautifully composed scenes and just like aesthetically really beautiful, but then having some kind of deeper meaning to it drew me in. And so, like, yeah, definitely Stanley Kubrick was a huge influence on me. And actually, a lot of his films, even um, all of his non-science fiction work, that stuff also was very influential to me. All of that. Let's see, who else? In more modern times, I would say Chris Nolan, definitely, the way he tells stories, also
Yeah.
science fiction related, and being ballsy to do it in that way and not care about how other people think. Um, these are people that are pushing the boundaries of the medium that they're in, and very definitely inspiring to me.
I gotta ask, you mentioned his name. What's your favorite Bruce Lee film?
Oh, um, Chinese Connection is important to me, but Enter the Dragon also is very important. I think Chinese Connection, that one, because he's talking about like he directly deals with discrimination against Chinese, right? In that one. Whereas like the Chinese are the sick man of Asia, and he says that line, "We are not the sick man of Asia." Like all that.
Yeah.
As a kid growing up watching that was like gave me fire, to be proud of my culture and to be proud of myself, but so that one personally is way more influential to me than the others.
Chinese Connection was the one where his necklace got broken, right?
Yeah, it's the one where he's basically fighting against the Japanese and the other Japanese school.
Yeah.
And he takes out the entire dojo. I think it's called Fist of Fury in some places and Chinese Connection in other places.
Okay. So this actually segues perfectly into the next question. And I think we slightly tapped on this on IG, but I love to let the Facebook audience and our YouTube audience hear this response as well. So, how important is representation in media, and did it play a part to you guys' story as well?
I think it's super important in nowadays, like having grown up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s where you didn't see much representation. It affects you. It affects you pretty badly, and so it makes you feel like you don't belong. It makes you feel like you're not part of the American fabric, all those things. And so it's very important to have that kind of representation. I was just talking earlier how this year when Michelle Yeoh won the Oscar, and she said the first line she said was, "This is for all the little girls out there that look like me." My daughter was sitting right next to her, and she jumped up immediately. She goes, "Is she talking about me? She's talking about me?" And then the same way with I saw the responses about like how the new Little Mermaid, and I saw a bunch of responses of little black girls going, "So happy to see the mermaid could be her." On screen. Like that is so inspiring for young kids. It makes them feel like they belong and doesn't feel like that they're not part of this, even though they are, I think it means everything. And so in the comic book world, I think it's equally as important because, superheroes are historically white. I grew up with all the comic books I read. They're all white dudes, right? And I was wondering why there wasn't any more representation. So I started looking at manga and Chinese comics even to try and find stuff that I could relate to and was representative of me growing up. So to have it in America, which is a diverse country, it's important to represent us truly,
Yeah, it's kind of cool, like the impact that like Shang-Chi had, man. I'm big on Chinese and Japanese culture, and I love Shang-Chi. I was turned up for that one.
Well, not just Shang-Chi, but Mortal Kombat.
All of
like those movies. Like it shows that you don't need. You can have a predominantly Asian cast and still like break barriers.
Yeah.
And, especially when it comes to POCs altogether. So even though it's a slight tilt, but we still got ways to go when it comes to like really like making a staple in our fabric of the American way. But but we're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. It's definitely better than the 70s and 80s, that's for sure.
It is. Our whole company was founded. Concrete Comics was founded on representation and just giving our people that look like us a chance to say, "Hey, man, I want to be him. I want to be her. I want to be this. I want to be that." And it's no slight and is nothing. I guess we're not excluding anybody. We're just telling great stories, and that's exactly what you guys have here with EVERMIND as well. And that kind of leads me to a question with you, Sean. As I'm looking through the Kickstarter, I saw some representation of us in there, and that made me very happy, man. And, to see, let's see all races in your story. And I just think that that's dope. But but the main focus is you guys, and I think that is fire to me because it's so much needed. Did you do that purposely, or was that just you just seeing the world for what it is?
Oh, exactly. It's basically seeing the world for what it is. I mean, I kind of create these characters. In the beginning, they're kind of just blank templates, and then, ironically, I'll let Carl say like, what would this person look like, and then he would just kind of like tell me who that would look like, and the idea that you can just drop in any type of race into any type of character, I think that's a pretty bold move. I mean, who you make the hero and who you make the villain, it seems really charged these days. And I was just basically focusing on story, and then I think maybe it's a reaction to when I was at Marvel and DC, that they would at some point offer me only Asian characters, which was good and bad in a way that it kind of pigeonholes you into drawing a certain type. But then again, that type was kind of in vogue when I was over there. So there was tons of that work. So I figure one of the reasons to kind of get out that and just tell a story without any agenda in mind is what this book kind of does for me. Although ironically, it ends up being an Asian cast or an Asian protagonist. But the idea is that these roles can be inhabited by anyone,
I love it. I love it all. So we got like 2 more questions for you guys, because I know y'all been ripping and running, man, all day. Ever since I woke up, I think I see you guys. So
we good. I've done 40 interviews in one day, so this is
one day. The Lord, well, you know what? I can imagine on the red carpets and stuff, it can get crazy.
I'm about to say, Daniel's probably used to media press and stuff like that, going in and out of places.
Well, what's interesting is everybody in this one, people are asking different questions. Like in some of the TV media stuff, that 40 interviews, most of them is all the same questions. So I'm just saying the same thing over and over and over again all day long.
Yeah.
And I can see why most of those actors, after a while, they just like this.
Yeah.
So real quick, so we do got some comments. Bernard Chang, I just backed the Kickstarter.
Thank you,
Shout
Bernard.
out to you, man. Showing love.
Yeah, Bernard Chang is a brilliant. He's a friend of mine. He's a brilliant artist. So you should check out he's got an X-Men book out right now, written by Louise Simonson. So yeah, he's super talented and an inspiration to me. We talk almost daily. So
that's awesome.
That's awesome. My brother.
You know what I mean? And that's what friends are for. You know what I mean? Friends are for to support. We got our good family over here, the Black Comic Lords. It's one of the dopest spaces for Black creators like me and Onaji, where we can really exist in and share our thoughts with other people that are just looking for more representation and content. So shout out to the Black Comic Lords. They're glad to be here. They do have a question for you guys. What were some of the? Well, we did answer that one. The influences definitely were awesome. We got author Montrez in here. I love the concept for EVERMIND. Excited to read it. Support that Kickstarter, Montrez. Get up in there. We got Biff Bam Boom Comics. Yo, what up, fellas?
I like that name.
Is it difficult to be inclusive in your storytelling without falling into a stereotype or trope? That's a good question.
Very good question.
Well, our protagonist doesn't do martial arts in this one.
But he's a scientist, though.
Yes.
But I don't think that was a trope, really, because like once you get into the story, you almost forget what race he is, and that's the best kind of integration that you can have, right?
Yeah.
That the race doesn't become a point at all, and it's more about you're getting behind this character because his struggle or what he's going for is something that you could relate to. And I really like the father-daughter aspect of it, because I think that humanizes the story and takes it beyond any kind of race. It makes it totally relatable. It's like, a father's always trying to provide for their family, but sometimes they can get overtaken by that idea and then forget about their family on that path, right? And I think Lucas Jong is headed in that direction. I mean, part of it is ego as well. And these are all things that we have to deal with as men. It's like, how do you balance success and ego and family and all those things in one package, and trying to find the right balance? And I think that is a universal storytelling tool, that it doesn't fall into necessarily a stereotype, but becomes universally relatable.
That is awesome. That was a really great comeback right there, brother. You know what I mean? We got back to Kickstarter. That's what we like to see. This
Yeah.
is this
Thank
this,
you,
this is
Michael.
why we're doing this, y'all.
Yep.
Get the
Thank you,
back.
Michael.
Yeah, that guy Michael is one of my. I just think he seems to be like one of my number one supporters. He's
Really?
called Dr. Midnight, yeah, he backs a lot of things I do, and just like is an avid, just a you couldn't ask for a better fan, and he's an artist himself. So I really appreciate it.
No, shout out to Michael DeFontaine, man. We love you guys that support us creators. You got to understand how much it puts more fuel into our emptying gas tanks that starts dwindling, and we need some recharging. And it's definitely amazing.
Yeah, we should put out there. It's not easy to do it by yourself, right? It's not easy to do independent comics. It's not an easy thing, and it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of effort, and everyone's doing it because they're passionate about it and they want to make a difference in that world. And so, everyone out there, it's important to support all the indie comics out there.
We appreciate that too, Mr. Wolf, for sure. And then we got the last shout out from Black Comic Lords. Into the Badlands was a banger, man. I will say that. it was a banger. A lot of us enjoyed that, man.
I want to address something real quick because everyone seems to think I have something to do with this. I didn't have anything to do with it being canceled. That was not beyond. That was beyond my control. If I had, I would still be doing it for several years. So that's the other thing is like the rights are not in my hands, so I can't restart it. We got to get the studio to do it. So if anybody wants it to come back, go right to AMC and get them to make it come back.
For sure.
Yeah,
all right,
Daniel, they don't know the inner workings of what really goes on behind the scenes. They just it's way more complicated than just like, oh yeah, let's bring it back. No.
Right, exactly. And that's why it's fun working on this comic book, because we cut out the studio, we cut out the yes men. Yes. And we doing this ourselves, and we do it how we want to do it, right? And so ultimately we have the control in the end. So I think it's a lot more work, like you guys know, and it's a lot risky sometimes, but at the same time the reward is much bigger.
Oh yeah.
I think you have someone in the chat for you, Sean and Daniel. Between Sean and Daniel, who has the most viral social media post?
I don't know if I have any viral stuff. I get, my fans follow stuff, but I don't know if I do any viral posts.
Yeah. No, so I do have a good question for you guys, man. That's banking off of what we're talking about now, and to circle it back to EVERMIND, which if you guys are watching this and you haven't supported the Kickstarter, go over to Kickstarter, type in EVERMIND. If you do not, see it, go support that Kickstarter. Let's run this thing up to 20K. I believe I looked at it. It was at like 12 or 13K, I believe.
13.
13. It's moving because it was 12 when I last looked at it. So
just go in the comments. We dropped the link twice in the comments. Just go in the comments, click on the link, and
click on the link. Don't be stingy with that money either. All right.
We got many tiers for you to get involved in. So if you want specialized custom art from Sean, there's that tier, and then if you just want to support simply, there's that tier as well. So
no, for sure. So this is a question for Sean, man, because I know that you were really brainstorming on this project for a while. So what do you want the audience to take away from this story? Is there a lesson in here? Is there something that you want them to, hark on for the future?
Well, definitely there's sort of an allergy to when writers kind of hit you over the head with a point. I don't know what it is about that, but people just reflexively don't like that. But that says, as a writer, in a sense, what you try to do is you have an opinion on what a good way to live is, and then you kind of embed that into your story. And I think readers or people who want to hear stories are really looking about, in the end, on a reptilian brain standpoint, trying to gather information about how to live more successfully and how to survive better. And that's why we like stories, because someone can tell you an anecdote and you can feel it and live it, and the story becomes very engaging. So when you start hearing these things about how with deeply embedded messages, your ears perk up, and then you take in the story, and it's basically like entertainment. So science fiction can be very dystopian, could be very negative, and there could be a negative cloud over it. I'm really not that type of person. We do touch upon that a lot in getting to where we end up. But in the end, my message would probably be hopeful. And then, this story has a big cycle of like a philosophical question about the role of science in society, and I will express my viewpoints, buried deep within a narrative that's entertaining.
That's dope, man. That is fire. And same question for you, Mr. Wu. What do you want people to take away from this story?
Well, I mean, at the base level of anything I do, I want people to be entertained. That's the most important thing. But if they can take home the deeper messages that we're trying to insert into the story and think about those things, I think any good sci-fi makes me think for days after seeing it or reading it or whatever, and what they're trying to say about us as human beings. We have a lot to learn as human beings. We need to grow and be better and all that kind of stuff. And I think science fiction, and I think EVERMIND really puts those questions out there and gets everyone thinking. So as long as people are thinking after they read it and they want more, I'm happy.
Hey, no, that's dope. I'm gonna let Mr. Rouse finish off this last question, and then before you guys leave, we got just a small game for you to play, and then it is what it is. Here go the question, Mr. Rouse.
All right. Eventually, not at the moment because there's stuff going on with the industry. But would you like to see this eventually adapted into live action or animation?
No. Oh, yeah, of course. Of course, I think that's the game plan for a lot. Like comics, it's hard to kind of generate enough money in it, so everyone's kind of looking at toward the end game, and a lot of time the end game ends up being like a movie or television deal. I try not to think of that. I try to make this the best comic book I can, and you can tell. I mean, there's evidence. You can tell when a comic book is being groomed to be a Netflix pitch, and those I think people will kind of reject. And one of the signs is that if you're in one location for a long time, that's very shootable, But if you read our comic, we're all over the world. We're all over the map. We're underground. We're above ground, and to the point where this gets really complicated if this were ever going to become a movie. But fortunately, there's like so many ideas in there that you can actually make little TV series or movies in different parts of it because it has quite a few big ideas in it.
I think absolutely that's something we thought about, but I think Sean is right. We wanted to make a good comic book first. So, I mean, I think going back to the topic of representation is you got to get it out there. And then part of what I'm doing, is like me as an Asian American male actor waiting for the right project to come along means you could wait for the rest of your life because they aren't writing that stuff for us. So if you create your own content, then you have stuff out there that you can pitch and possibly get made. That's kind of, a dream of mine. So if we could take this eventually to television and film, I'd love to do that. But right now, the number one goal is to just make this a great comic book. And I think we're already headed that way.
I love that answer. It's actually an answer that we don't usually get. Usually people, they jump right to the, action, live action, film, stage play. They jump right to it. But to see the are really focusing on the story really makes me happy and excited to not only be a fan but invest into this project because I feel like it's not going to be one of those one and dones, 5 issues and it's out of there. You guys plan on really telling the story for a while, so that's exciting, man. So before we let you guys get out of here, we have this game called Top 3. I'm going to ask you a series of random questions, and you just name your top 3 favorites. I got a couple here on the list here. So this first question goes to Daniel. What is your top 3 American sitcoms?
Whoa. Wow. Dang. Going back deep. I was out of the country for 20 years, so I missed a lot. But when I left, it was like Friends and Seinfeld actually is one of my favorite. Even to this day, you can still watch it and it's still good. Friends, not so much. But I know people still watch it. What else? What else was there that I loved growing up? I'm not sure. Number 3. I have to get back to you on that one.
And for you, Sean, let me see. What are your top 3 supervillains from any universe?
Wow. Okay.
Movies, universe, whatever you want to call it. It can be movies, comics, whatever. Top three villains.
I think Darth Vader has to be in there. I think that's on everyone's list. And then some that are more surprising, like as a writer, I'm looking at how structurally they work, how they serve in the story. And so I would say like the Wicked Witch of the West from Wizard of Oz is a very good villain. And then I guess the third one would probably be, I think Hannibal Lecter is a great villain.
Those are some good choices. I wasn't expecting that, man. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting some, some villains I never heard of from DC or something in Marvel or somewhere deep in the cloth of He-Man somewhere.
Or the typical Joker and that type of thing. But Wicked Witch.
There's so many.
Yeah, I never thought Hannibal Lecter is a real good one, man. But this was an awesome interview, guys. We really appreciate you guys stopping past Konkret Approved. We hope we helped in any way spread the word and spread the knowledge of your project that we will shout out again. EVERMIND, if you want to give a last minute pitch for it, feel free to go ahead and let the people know what they're getting into, what they're diving into, and why they should support this project.
Okay, so EVERMIND it's a passion project, and I think people who have read it are really into it. We've heard many times where they only gave themselves time to read the first issue, but they'll tear through all 3 issues. And that's a real vote of confidence for me. So it is a very different type of story, because I think what you see these days, if you're tired of superhero stories, if you're not going to the movies, it's a lot of times because they're feeling very similar and they're taking very safe steps, because that's the nature of that business, is not to take a huge swing because you could really fall flat on your face. So this one is a bold direction with a lot of new ideas that I think are very creative. And you can see the passion. The book kind of like really crackles with passion. And this is not something that I have confidence saying about myself. It's just what I hear from other people. And I'm just really glad that that's the response that they've been getting. So I hope you check it out and then let me know what you think of it.
Any last words for you, Mr. Wu?
I just think that people should support independent creativity, because that's where you're going to get the best kind of creativity. The mainstream stuff is out there. You see it, it is what it is. But the fun stuff is in the independent stuff. So whether it's independent comics, movies, music, keep supporting that, because those artists are the ones that really need the support. So support the independent creative spirit.
Have any last words, Mr. Rouse?
No, none at all. Thank everyone for having me on this interview. It was a blast.
Thanks for being here.
That's Onaji Rouse, and I'm Lonzo Starr, your host of Konkret Approved and CEO and founder of Konkret Comics. And as we always say, keep it concrete and support your people. Y'all know the vibes, man. And we're going to get up out of here. That's the